Welcome, Didier.
Thank you.
How is life?
Absolutely great, thank you.
Fantastic. Let's start the dilemmas by watching a short video.
Scandals happen all the time. The question is, how do democracies respond to those scandals?
And what will it mean for the wider region? I think one of your children has just walked in. I mean, shifting sands in the region. Do you think relations with the North may change?
I would be surprised if they do. Pardon me. My apologies.
What's this going to mean for the region?
My apologies. South Korea's policy choices on North Korea have been severely limited in the last 6 months to a year.
Quite funny to see, Didier. Is that one of the reasons why Teams also included the virtual background?
The blurred background,
yeah,
yes.
The blurred background?
Well, first of all, I think it's interesting to see that 1 year of pandemic has changed, I think, people's expectations, perception, and also acceptance. I think we've done actually a study not so long ago, and one of the outcomes of that study was that people actually were now more used to get in people's home and getting more used to that. So those types of what probably were incidents a couple of years ago would see a higher level of acceptance today.
Yeah, it's quite funny to see. And thinking 4 years ago. Let's take a look at the dilemmas.
Yes.
With the first one, which is working from home, office, or just a place where work happens. What's your take on the working from home experience?
Well, first of all, I think for Microsoft, it's not new. I joined Microsoft 17 years ago, and I remember about 1 year after I joined, which is like 16 years ago, we kind of pioneered the concept of new world of work. And at the core of this concept was actually flexibility of when and where you were working. So working either in the office or at home or with customers and partners, it's not something new. Now, back in those days, technology was kind of not easy to get to that point. Today, I think the issue is not as such technology. I think it's more kind of a cultural element. And to be honest, it took us many years, maybe not 16 years, but many years, to really figure out what it means to work from home, what it means to work in the office. How do people deal with that additional responsibility, empowerment, autonomy that they're having? And what I think is interesting now is that the pandemic brought us kind of a real life massive experiments. It's kind of like the first time that you have that experiment on that level. And so suddenly, like everyone either was forced to do it or was invited to work from home, and so that's kind of the interesting thing about the recent pandemic.
Yeah. In fact, we went from an environment where you went to the office to sleeping at the office, because the office became the past 12 months your home. So you were sleeping, in fact, at the office, spending quite a lot of time. But also for me, I think being in my 30s, it's not the office or home. It's really in the future having, first of all, a digital landscape and also platform where you can really connect anywhere where you are, and you can work in a pub, you can work at Starbucks, you can do it at the airport, maybe from the park. We have at Xylos quite a lot of walking meetings these days, and I think one of the benefits is that with Teams, which we really implement massively these days, and also if you see at the adoption in Belgium, I think more than 2.2 million Teams users are active in Belgium, and we were quite lucky that in January, when I started as CEO of Xylos, I went really Teams first. So meaning that all the communication is going through Teams, and then secondly through email for internal communication. And we created channels, and also it's recreating some environments that you had at the office in a Teams environment. One of the most popular channels today, Didier, is the Kudos channel, where people randomly celebrate, share successes, and say thank you to a colleague, which in the past was physically at the office. You said, hey, thanks for winning that deal. And that's what we recreate and also help customers to really adopt that technology and to create not only physically a safe space at home these days with COVID, but also digitally creating a productive and also a nice environment.
I think what's interesting is obviously that we're kind of working in an industry that is probably a little bit more used to that. But think about it, you have now like every commercial organization, but also every public organization that went through that. And so for a lot of people, it was really their first experience with that level of flexibility. And I think that's what's interesting, and that's also what is going to be sticky on the long term. It's not that obviously nobody wants to work like 5 days a week from home, but what is going to be sticky, I think, is that additional flexibility, where clearly every study that we're doing is showing that both on the employer side and on the employee side, people are saying like, hey, 1, 2, or 3 days of homework or more flexible work is there to stay. And so that's kind of interesting, is that a lot of things that probably we were used to already in our past, even if now we pushed it to the extreme, that a lot of people at that experience for the first time.
Yeah, and I think one of the key elements also with Viva and Viva Insights is that what I really love about the product is it helps you as a manager, as an employee, to really steer better your time, and really it gives you insight on how many meetings do I have, you know, am I having enough focus time in my organization, or are people all the time in meetings with many people in that meeting, and it's really it's being a sort of buddy and in your work experience. And
Correct.
I think that is quite important, because there was quite a fear before on how do you get all that data, how do you get it, how do you get the value out of it. And I think that is quite interesting with the Viva Insight, that it can really be your buddy telling you, you know, how can I be more productive, and how can I also find a good balance between all the focus time and all the meetings and all the interactive sections.
Actually, I think both for individuals and also for managers, it allows you to kind of manage this new experience a little bit better. So,
and Didier, any anecdote of the past 12 months? A dog, a cat walking in during a meeting, which sometimes happens with colleagues, or the baby. I have 3 little kids. I have to admit, sometimes it was not. I had not the kids, but it was so hot last summer that I was in short pants and in a swimsuit with a shirt on, but no one noticed, which was the funny thing when working from home.
Yeah, my kids are a little bit bigger, so when they hear that I'm on the phone and they know that I do a lot of video conferencing, they kind of stay away. But for sure, I think like every Microsoft colleague has seen my 2 cats in the meantime. So they've been walking in front of the screen. That's for sure.
Fantastic. Let's move to the second dilemma.
Yeah, the second one is actually really on the item of brainstorming. So for you, brainstorming, a better experience online or offline?
I think, you know, first of all, you know, really, I love brainstorming. You know, some people say that, you know, I have a stock in Post-its because it's quite effective to structure ideas, and you know, it's for me, again, it's not one or another. I think in creative sessions it's quite important to be together, but we have been doing quite a lot of sessions online, and I think with the whiteboard, with the Post-its and with the chat, you can be quite effective. And for me, you know, technology is a tool. It's not a purpose on itself. It's really there to help you. And you know, there's quite a lot of tooling, and also in for example, the Microsoft Teams environment that can help you to be creative, to gather ideas. But also one of the aspects is that you don't have to do it at the same time. You can have you can have a creative session with certain moments in the evening. I can share some creative ideas. People can work on it later. You can do it from anywhere. So it's way more flexible, and you can have a sort of whiteboard where you share ideas. That's also what we do. And you can share ideas, you know, in the morning. I can add them in the afternoon, and then, you know, with the Microsoft Surface, you know, device, we can physically even afterwards play with them, and we save some paper, which is also good. And so it's really that hybrid way. But we're still looking for the right match. It's not that easy, I must say.
Yeah, look, I think obviously today we're thinking about it in a very binary way because now everyone is working from home. But when you think about it in kind of a post-COVID, the true work environment will be a hybrid environment, and so obviously what I do see being a trend that will, being a kind of a long-lasting trend, is not that you do everything either offline or everything online, but that you kind of having more kind of a mixed type of experience. For instance, if you think about a typical sales cycle, maybe in the past, in a typical sales cycle, you would visit your customer 4 times, and each time it would be a physical meeting. You would be in your car. You would go through traffic jams. Now maybe you'll do 2 out of those 4 visits in a face-to-face meeting, and 2 others will be online meetings. I think that's probably the more kind of the more longer-term thing. The other thing that I think is interesting is often people think about the meeting itself, but one of the things that I really like about solutions like Teams is the pervasiveness, is what happens before your meeting, where you start to prepare, where you start to share documents, the meeting itself, and then what happens after the meeting, and the fact that you can go back to the Teams channels, for instance, find back that information, look at the information, where you can, for instance, automatically record what happens in the meeting, so that even if you didn't attend the brainstorming session, you can listen in and being inspired. So for me, it's more kind of that hybrid piece.
Yeah, and I think one of the things which is really effective with Teams for when you onboard new employees is the fact that they can see the history, the chat history. They can see how people talk to each other. What were the discussions, 1 month ago? And they can really look at that history, and it can really help them to understand the culture, to interact, which is way more difficult with email, because you will not show the emails of 2 months ago to a colleague, but in a chat, in a
the
good
pervasiveness again.
It is quite effective, and I think the governance of everything is important. How do we use Teams? How do we get insights, and how do we make it productive? And that's why we see a lot of coaching and also adoption. And for us at Xylos, really, what is key is we place the end user really at the middle of everything. And then we see how can we use and how can we create an effective digital but also physical environment with the good tools, with the good adoption, with really the good software to really be as effective as possible.
I think the other thing that I'm thinking about when I think about brainstorming is obviously creativity, innovation more largely. And one of the things we have seen is that in this work from home environment, people tend to reduce their contacts to people that they are working with very frequently. And so we see people collaborating more intensely, but we see people a little bit more working with broader groups of people. And so if I connect it back, for instance, to some of the tools that are embedded in Viva, from a management perspective, one of the things I'd like to look at is how people are collaborating across bigger groups. Because we know that innovation happens when, for instance, product teams are talking to sales teams or to marketing teams, so across a broader scale of people. Yeah. And so that's another thing that I would say, let's be cautious and use the data to kind of understand that and try to steer your teams to pay attention to have that kind of broader...
and one of the ways we've noticed the same, and also with our customers, that sometimes the communication with certainly a new colleague, it's quite hard to meet you're new in a company, how can you meet someone else new that is not working in the same department? One of the solutions we created is the Xylos Matchmaker, and automatically, based on some also a bit of AI, it matches you each week with a colleague you don't talk a lot with. So even I receive every week, it's a bot saying, hey Patrick, I just connected you with Ruben, and immediately you can say, let's book a meeting or immediately chat. And it's really a way to open up. Yeah. And I think that's also one of the great ways where you can get people together, and really, it's a bit of Tinder for business, you could say. But it's a way really to open up, because sometimes you need to guide also colleagues to meet, because these days we can do a reception. Let's have a look at the third topic. Meetings, is there another way? Didier.
Yes. Well, I think a couple of things for me that are quite different. First of all, my meetings are way shorter. I kind of realize that when you're doing your meeting online, you get quicker to the point. So I've kind of shortened my meetings. Little trick for people is, when you have a 1 hour meeting and you reduce it to like a 15 minutes meeting just to introduce a break, instead of what most people are doing, like starting the meeting on the hour and end at 10:02, start your meeting actually at 10 past the hour, because your brain is constructed in such a way that when you're in a meeting and you get towards the end of that hour, psychologically you kind of want to stop the meeting. And so your 10 minutes buffer is on the next meeting and not on that one. But I think the most important piece, and certainly the one that I think will be important also when we'll go partly back to the office, so when some people will join in online, some people will be present, is how do you make sure that there is inclusion? How do you make sure that all voices are heard? Because one of the things, I've also been managing Switzerland for now, and I think for me it was easier when everyone was online. But when part of the people were in the office and I was online, I didn't have the same level of participation. So one of the things I try to do is, how do you make sure that you have a meeting leader or a meeting facilitator, and his or her job is really to make sure that people's voices are heard. So that I think is kind of key for meetings in the future.
Completely agree. And one of the very effective ways we use for online meetings and also hybrid meetings is using the chat. So also in times of effectiveness, where instead of saying, what is your question, and raising your hand and having to speak, we really proactively say, Didier will do a presentation. In the meantime, if you have questions, put them in the chat. And if you think it's a good question, and you also want to have that answer, give it a like. Yeah. And you win so much time, because, and even the speaker can directly interact, and it's way more effective. And I think that is quite key also, to use the tools, and have a good facilitator that guides you in the beginning to have a set of rules and practices that you would immediately apply, and not just do the same as we did before in an online meeting, but really have a good governance. And then apply it with, the hands, with using the chat, and then, productivity goes up.
Maybe we'll have some online meeting etiquette that will come back to the offline physical meetings. Indeed. So let's go to question number 4. Changes. What are the biggest ones in your organization since the pandemic? And you're on top of that, you're the new CEO. So
yeah, so I joined the company in January 2020, and I'm quite young CEO. Xylos, a company founded by my dad 40 years ago. Fantastic organization with more than 200 experts, and it's quite an atypical company because we not only have the geeky stuff and the IT stuff, but we also do everything from learning. So we really do all the adoption, the coaching. We have not fitness coaches, but we have digital coaches, which we do for quite a lot of organizations. And then we have a very creative part where we build applications with Bagar. And so my dad told me, Patrick, being a CEO, it's a tough life. It's a challenging life. And I said, okay, it will be challenging. And then 3 months later, suddenly I was banned to my home and I had to steer an organization virtually. But I think the big luck is that we're a digital first company, and we even adapted our organizational chart purely online, and I think Teams, and I think we will come back to that, was really essential, because we don't see it as a video tool or as a chatting tool. It's really a platform, and it's really like your iPhone, and you could say the phone is to call and to text, but no, this is really your remote. This is my remote for my life, where I can see, how am I doing in my health? Am I active enough? Am I walking enough? I can order food. And I think for us, Teams was really, and I think for organizations, you need to consider it as a platform and as your remote control in your organization to get things done.
I think for us, as I mentioned before, we had a technology in place. I think to some extent we had a lot of the culture already in place, that culture of empowerment and agility. So people, when we moved in March of last year to that work from home, people knew what they had to do and they knew what was expected from them. I don't think that was kind of the biggest change. I think the biggest change for us is that at some point of time you really have that kind of well-being topic that is popping up, and where to some extent you have to learn that your own situation is not the situation of your peers and colleagues. If you're like me, in a kind of recomposed family where you have 1 out of 2 weeks you are with 5 kids at home, there is a lot of things are happening, a lot of noise, which is kind of leading to some degree of stress. But it's very different from that person, for instance, that young student that left school, that is in his first apartment, that lives alone, and that is confronted with a lot of solitude. And so I think what we are really focused on is really kind of understanding, getting the signals from what people really had to go through and see what we could do either online and offline. We talked about it earlier, but doing walking meetings, we called it walk in the park type of meetings. But I think that's for us was the kind of the biggest change, is that really focus on that employee well-being and really make sure that we understood what people were going through, and not assume that what you are living every day is necessarily what other people. I remember kind of an anecdote. At some point of time having a call with people, and the person was in the car, and I said, no problem, I'll wait, just go in your home and I'll wait for 5 minutes. And say, no, we have a couple of people at home and we're dividing, and there was one in the bedroom and there was one on the kitchen table and one in the car, and we kind of move around during the day and coming to that realization that, wow, that's a kind of different way of experiencing, and we need to take that into account. That's probably the biggest change we had.
I think what was quite key in also my team and in the organization is being so focused on, of course, the pandemic and then the business. It's key to ask, how are you?
Yes.
Because you go in an online meeting, it's quite effective. What is the business problem, or what is a customer's problem, and how can we help them? But with your employees, it's really just asking the very simple question, how are you today? And even in my management team, we try to do that, and because we all experience it in a different way, and we have highs and lows. I think that is also quite important.
Absolutely.
Good. Then we go to the next topic, which is collaboration. What are the next steps for people working together? What is the future bringing us, Didier?
Well, I think the most obvious is obviously the hybrid piece. Once you are considering that people have started to enjoy that level of flexibility, both flexibility in terms of place and in terms of time, what you will see is that people are going to work from home or work in different places 1, 2, or 3 days a week. Yeah. And what it means is that with some exceptions being like really important meetings where you may be able to mandate that people are going to the office, the vast majority of people interactions, because I don't think it's necessarily that much of a problem when people are working alone on a specific document or work, but it's more on the collaborative piece, is that in the vast majority of situations, you will have people in the meeting that will be in the office, that will be coming in one physical room, and you will have other people that will join remotely. And so that hybrid workspace is, I think, both from a technology perspective, but also from a people and cultural perspective, I think the next thing that will be key. Yeah. And a couple of the things that we discussed already, the fact that you have that kind of pervasiveness in your communication, collaboration across those tools, the fact that you are making sure through chat or through raising your hands that you have that inclusiveness between people that are offline or physically present and online. All of those things. That's, I think, where we left the next level. And then the last thing, but I don't think it's as much linked to what we've seen now, the pandemic and stuff like that, is I think the next wave, the next big wave of innovation is linked to everything that is to do with artificial intelligence. You start to see it for those who are already experiencing some of the Viva services. You start to see that kind of machine that is kind of helping you, that is providing you information, that is surfacing stuff that is really relevant to your day in a way that is almost disappearing to the background. You don't realize what's kind of the technology complexity behind it, and I think that's probably where also technology is at its best. Yeah. I think that's probably the couple of things that I would highlight for the future of collaboration.
Yeah, I think it's with Xylos we help these days quite a lot of customers with RPA, robotic process automation, and it's really how can you automate jobs you do every day where there's no added value. And we see these days even in Microsoft Teams, a proposal on saying how should you answer on a question you received in emails that I receive with a yes or no, instead of typing myself, the computer and the software is proposing already an answer or suggesting. And I think for me it's the future is less about physical typing yourself or touching the screen. It will be way more with voice. If I still have a younger brother, writing an email or sending a text doesn't feel so comfortable. And even these days, when I'm in the car or when I'm somewhere, I prefer to send a voice message, even to colleagues, to say, hey, I'm thinking about that. And it's really how can you use more voice in an effective way, and in an automated with some AI, or even when you do chat, I can chat in Dutch, and if you're Korean, you receive the message in Korean, and it's just automatic, and it's really bringing that communication in a smart, more effective, and only doing yourself things where you can really make a difference. And I think we will see that quite a lot in all the collaboration, the communication way. And for me, there again, it will be with the remote control, and one of the special and the things I love is the App Store. The App Store not only on my smartphone, but the App Store also in Microsoft Teams, where you have a bunch of application tools, gadgets, which are quite effective to help me to be more productive.
No, that's great. So I think the last topic of today, and maybe we should turn it around that you asked me the question, but I think both, Microsoft Viva, what do you expect? And then I'll say afterwards.
Always when I hear Viva, I think Viva España, but it makes me, I think there is so much data, and there is so much with working hybrid. It's how can we help managers and employees to be more effective, to find a balance between work and also their well-being, because being disconnected is also important. And it's really it's helping that manager to steer with the insights on how much focus time is my team having, how many large meetings do we have, is the well-being okay, and it's really helping. And I think before there was a lot of data and insights about adoption, and it was quite binary. Do people use it or not? Mm-hmm. And what is the amount? But I think today we will get much more detail, and I think there we will get intelligence, and with that intelligence, the time we cannot buy, but I think how we use the time will be quite effective, and the insights will help us there. And I think that is quite important. Even these days, I receive, and I sometimes look, with who do I have no one-to-one with my direct reports? Mm-hmm. I get insights on, hey Patrick, you haven't planned a one-to-one with one of your colleagues for the next 3 weeks, but you did that the past 2 months. Here's a suggestion on even a moment where you can see each other. Yeah. I think that is fantastic. It's making me, it's helping me to be a better manager, and to be also better guiding my customers on the interactions.
I think one of the things that was striking for me when when we launched Microsoft Viva and when we had kind of the first announcement is how much it helps me with things that are really top of mind for me from a leadership perspective. When you think about it, what is really top of mind, at least for me and I think for many other leaders, is one is your culture. How, what's the culture of the organization? How do you engage with people? How do you make sure that you have shared values? And so that kind of entire motion of employee engagement is kind of one thing. Has always been important, is I think even more important now in this current work from home concept. The second piece, and you alluded to it, is all of the insights. As you're saying, we have a lot of data, and we're not necessarily using a lot of that data. And I'm personally, I've always been kind of a bit of a data driven person in the way I make decisions. And I remember like 2 aha moments. One was really coming to the realization that through the pandemic that people were working way longer, up to sometimes even 2 hours more than they would do before the pandemic. So truly have that understanding on an organizational level what it means, and say like, hey, this is something that we really need to address from a leadership perspective. But then from a personal perspective, I kind of realized that when I look at my directs, that there were some directs where I spend a lot of time and some directs that I didn't spend much time. And in some cases that is perfectly justified because you have kind of a common project or something. But in some cases I was like thinking back like, hey, is this normal that I don't spend as much time with this person as with this person? So also having kind of that inclusiveness was kind of interesting. And then the other thing is and we've been focusing on this a lot, is also kind of the lifelong learning and skilling. Obviously, we are again working in an industry where pace of change is very rapid and very quick. But we have really invested and spent a lot of time in kind of skilling and learning. And so the more you have the data, the more people understand where you're coming from, where you're going, what are your interests, and kind of having those kind of learning journeys that are really personalized for what you want to achieve. And so that I think is why, I mean, it's just out, so we don't have yet a lot of customer data on how people are going to adopting it. But when I was looking at the announcement and I was saying like, hey, this fits really well with what is truly top of mind. And so that's one of the things that I expect, is that both for individuals as for leaders, it will provide a lot of insights and data on all of those topics that are top of mind.
That is quite clear. Thank you, Didier, for that time and that interesting debate. And I'm quite looking forward to the future also of this more Viva Insights and the Viva aspect, which is, I think, fitting perfectly in the Microsoft ecosystem, and also on guiding customers to adopt it and to work in a secure and effective way online, but also certainly hybrid. So thank you.
And thank you for the invitation, and thanks obviously for the partnership. Thanks.
Great having you.